Congressman Higgins, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Yes, Ms. Carroll, I'm glad I could join you today.
You bet. Listen, I think most of our audience is well acquainted with the finer points of what the heck is going on in Washington, D.C. And I think the big question is, are we going to see Congress be able to do something substantive to put a halt to these just unbelievable prosecutions of the former president?
Well, I don't know about halting them. We certainly oppose it, and we are revealing the agenda-driven nature of what the Biden DOJ and the Biden-controlled prosecutors at the state level are doing. It's almost like barbaric what they're doing to the president's family. And I was with them last week. I met with the president for a couple of hours, and we had about an hour of private time at the round table, 10 or 12 of us, including Jeff Landry. And the president had this surreal calmness about him, Ms. Carroll, and he was asked, some of the folks there asked him how he was holding up in his family under these persecutions. And he had one of the most interesting answers. He said, it's just become a way of life for me. He said, they've been coming after me so aggressively and so hard since 2016 that I'm at peace with it. And that was a very interesting observation from my perspective. And I know the president pretty well. I consider him a friend. And I was very impressed by that stature that he presented as like a man under incredible fire was the calmest one in the room.
Yeah.
And so I cannot anticipate the end of the Biden DOJ and the Biden extreme liberal persecution of our former president and his main political rival. And I can't anticipate that being over until Biden is over. I mean, the Biden administration is set to get kicked out of the White House in the next election cycle. That's next year.
Yeah.
And I think we have to just survive and endure until then. And the Congress is doing our part, Ms. Carroll, with many hearings, just revealing the truth. That's what we have the constitutional authority to do. I don't have arrest authority. Mm-hmm. And we can't just take over the DOJ. We are pushing for impeachment of some secretaries, including Garland and
I know Mayorkas is your favorite.
And Mayorkas and
yeah.
And now I have to say that the evidence we're revealing about the president, about the inaugurated president, mm-hmm. the occupier of the White House, Joe Biden,
the resident.
It's so ugly that even I am now finding myself supporting impeachment of Joe Biden. And this is a threshold that I have been reluctant to cross. You and I have talked about it many times because I am a constitutionalist, and the founders intended it to be almost impossible to righteously impeach a sitting president. Forget about what the Democrats did to Trump or attempted to do to Trump when he was in office, because the Democrats were not righteous nor constitutional in their pursuit. And I'm just not going to abandon those principles. But the evidence that we are revealing and continue to reveal about Joe Biden's involvement with receiving corrupted monies, the scores of millions of dollars we've uncovered now that came into the Biden family while he was the vice president. And the only thing that his family had to sell was his influence. Mm-hmm. His influence within the White House as a long-term former senator, then vice president of the United States, was quite a offer to foreign nations and businesses in foreign nations, including China and Ukraine,
Congressman,
in order to have influence with them. So I even have crossed the threshold of supporting the impeachment of Biden. And so you're going to see those hearings moving forward.
What is astonishing to me, okay, the suspicious activity reports, hundreds of them, and the documents with the emails back and forth and the text messages back and forth and the money that changed hands, and yet you still have people like Raskin up there acting like, no, there's nothing to see here. We're not connecting the dots. Well, yeah, you are. The dots have been connected. Why? When is it going to get to a point? Will they ever acknowledge the truth? Ever? On the other side?
They privately do acknowledge the truth. If you talk to those guys, I haven't spoken to Jamie personally and privately, like with a friendly conversation since. I mean, we've exchanged niceties because that's the nature of congressional affairs, and I am a gentleman. And Jamie Raskin, your audience might be stunned to hear, but we were decent friends and colleagues across the aisle prior to the November 2020 election cycle. And we were on the same committee together, and I had even invited him and his family to Lafayette at some future date to come and dine with me and my family, to exemplify to the world, to the nation, that men of diametrically opposed political and ideological perspective could break bread together. And so I had actually invited Jamie Raskin to Louisiana. This was in my first term and second term, but after the 2020 election cycle, things changed. So I cannot tell you, what's deep in the heart of Jamie Raskin, but I can tell you that many Democrats that I've had, I've had less of a disintegration of personal friendships with and personal dialogues with over the last few years, they have admitted that the Democrats in their private conversations are quite shocked at what's being revealed about Joe Biden, who's a man they had all voted for and they all liked. And, he was like a stalwart of the Democrat Party. Man, he's been in office for 50 years.
Exactly.
He's been an elected Democrat. He is the poster man for career politician Democrat. And privately, they are, many of them do admit that what's being revealed is shocking to them.
Shocking, yeah.
And that he should resign. They don't want him to run. They see him as a weak candidate, and yet they're fearful to say so for their party because the Democrats are rather cannibalistic. That's something that we are not. Republicans don't do that. We generally don't eat our own. You might see it, a little bit of it in an election cycle when things get ugly, but I'm telling you, as a culture of the Democrat Party versus the Republican Party, the Democrats are quite cannibalistic. So many of them are fearful to voice their true opinions about what they think about Joe Biden.
But getting down to the economy, which is affecting a lot of people, and trying to get back on track with oil and gas and et cetera, and stopping this crazy Green New Deal stuff. Are you having any success with that? Because that's having a significant impact on, people all over the country, but especially here, with the oil and gas industry. Are you able to put the kibosh on some of those crazy ideas that they have about?
Okay, so at the federal level, the Green New Deal is the antithesis of American energy dominance. It's the opposite. So what we want and need as a nation, and what's good for the world, is for America to be the top producer of energy of all forms, including the fossil fuel energy and the clean, affordable natural gas energy, which is exportable in the form of liquefied natural gas. It's best for the world that when America runs those industries and provides that affordable, abundant fuel product that the world requires in order to function and to gain economic prosperity. Why is it good for the world and America does it? Because it's the cleanest here, by far. By far, it's the cleanest for the entire world. It's healthy for America to be energy dominant. And the Biden administration's, which sort of coined and described as a Green New Deal agenda, that's the opposite. That provides America with the opposite of American energy dominance. And it's quite nasty how those raw products are mined and pulled from the earth in order to provide the materials needed for solar panels and computer chips and windmills. As many rare earth materials that the mining for those ores are slave labor driven, and they're horrific, the environmental conditions with which they're mined. So the oil and gas industry will come back like throwing a switch at the federal level if we can pass our budget. If we pass our budget that we have written in the House, our 12 appropriations bills, those bills are filled with Republican-written policy called policy riders that we have attached to the appropriations bills, all 12 of them. And the sort of policy is so strong. I'm so happy with it. The Freedom Caucus has been at the table with every one of those bills. And trust me when I tell you, strong, conservative, America First policy is written into every appropriations bill. But if we do not pass those bills through the House and we end up with a CR to continue funding the government, then all of the conservative policy dies on the vine. And we get stuck with the policy that was written by the Democrats in the previous budget, because that's what a CR does. It's a continuing resolution of the existing budget along with all the policies that were written into the existing budget. So if you get a continuing resolution of funding, you end up with a continuing resolution of Democrat policy, which is Green New Deal stuff, saturated and permeated throughout. Yeah. But if we can pass our budget that we have written, Ms. Carroll, then all of the conservative policy riders will come into law, and we will have effectively used the power of the purse to force conservative reform upon this massive federal bureaucracy.
The problem I see is always with the Senate, the United States Senate. And, we had a little something on a text message thread about Anna Paulina Luno. She was on with Jesse Waters, and she said something about the impeachment. And then she made a comment about the senators. She's already been told by some Republican senators, and Jesse Waters said, like, which one? And she said, Senator Kennedy. And he was shocked, and I was too. I would never have thought that our senator would ever express. Now, maybe that was a misinterpretation. I don't know, but he was shocked. He said, I'm going to have Senator Kennedy on to talk about that. It really surprised him. Surprised me too.
Well, Ms. Carroll, nobody wants to man an oar until they're in a lifeboat. So the Senate, you have all kind of opinions about what position they might take, where they're leaning, if they don't have to make the decision of actually moving forward with impeachment proceedings that have been passed by the House. But watch what happens to these Republicans over in the Senate if the House is able to advance impeachment proceedings on any of the secretarial level executive traitors, like Mayorkas or Garland, Wray, Biden. If we're able to advance any of those impeachment, watch with the pressure that gets brought to bear.
Yeah.
So my advice to my Republican colleagues in the House is don't worry about the Senate. That's like the old school, good old boy, swampy, got to close the deal with the Senate before you pass it in the House. Yeah. Paul Ryan type formula.
Yeah, no, I don't see that.
I completely reject.
Yeah, I don't see that.
And the Freedom Caucus stands against that whole concept. So, same thing with the budget. We have to pass our budget in the House, and then it becomes incredible pressure upon the senators to perform. But if we never pass it in the House, their go-to line is, oh, well, they didn't pass anything in the House.
Yeah.
What are we supposed to
do? Got to do it. What about, there are a lot of folks are complaining about the FEMA maps and what FEMA is requiring in terms of insurance and flood zones and all that kind of stuff. Have you all been able to have an effect on any of that?
Well, legislatively, let me just give your audience some research to do. We have, I'm on a bill with Senator Cassidy and Kennedy that introduces significant reforms to NFIP, National Flood Insurance Program, and Risk Rating 2.0, which is quite injurious to Louisiana. And there was a lot of things that were either concealed from Congress when they originally passed that law, which I was not involved in those original, like the birth of Risk Rating 2.0. It had preceded my service in Congress. But basically, a bill of goods was sold to Congress before the current era, before the law started taking effect last year and this year, that they passed years ago. And as it became clear what the actual impact of Risk Rating 2.0 and the National Flood Insurance Program reforms that was sold to Congress by FEMA during the Obama administration, we have discovered to our horror that a bunch of that was lies or purposely concealed or whatever. That's a whole conspiracy discussion in and of itself. But the point is, I'm on legislation with both of our senators to meaningfully reform, be positive for Louisiana in a very big way, NFIP and the Risk Rating 2.0. And as far as private insurance and for property insurance in Louisiana and every other sovereign state that suffers natural disasters, wildfires on the West Coast, drought in the Midwest, big floods in the Midwest, hurricanes along the East Coast and Florida. It's not just us, in other words.
Yeah.
So I have a bill. It's H.R. 1545. H.R. 1545. I encourage your audience to look into it. You'll see the solution. I'm using the federal tax code to create an environment that will encourage insurance providers to continue doing business and to grow their portfolio of business in areas that have been impacted by natural disasters. So creating an atmosphere that would encourage the opposite of what we see right now, which is that insurance providers flee after a natural disaster. I encourage your audience to look into that.
Great. You have been so strong on the border. Are we making any progress in getting a handle? Do we have a border anymore? I mean, they've been giving Texas hell for putting in those buoys. Are we? And they keep changing the numbers because they're sending them. They give them like a card and they get scanned through like as though you're going through an Easy Pass or something at the border.
Yeah, it's got a good description. That's called CBP One app, which was designed for licensed commerce, and the Biden administration has taken the CBP One app, designed again for very limited use by registered licensed commerce transit between Mexico and the United States. And the Biden administration has spread that CBP One app throughout the entire cartel pipeline. So now the cartel, like all the way down in Colombia, believe it or not, the Biden administration has set up customs and border protection, CBP stations in Colombia and Panama and Guatemala, where they're processing people in with that app and granting them parole and flying them directly into the interior of the country.
It's just crazy. It's absolutely insane.
So basically, the Biden administration has created this bizarre, what they call a legal pathway that stretches all the way down into South America, that's just drawing in illegals into the pipeline. And the cartel is charging a fee for this. If you use a CBP-1 app, if you have it on your phone and you're an illegal in the pipeline, you better have paid your final entry fee, the cross-border fee, into the cartels. Because in the beginning, when the Biden administration launched the current version of the CBP-1 app, the cartels were losing money because folks were not having to pay their final entry into the country, that last $4,000 or $5,000 per person. And when you talk about millions of people a year, talking about a tremendous amount of money the cartels were losing. So the cartels got pissed, and they enacted this new policy that's in place now for the last month or so, where illegals have to pay a fee to the cartels, even though they're using the CBP-1 app.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
And so to answer your question, this thing's going in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
It's getting worse under the Biden administration. They're telling you the numbers are down, but they're not. The total numbers of illegals coming in is still at record levels, and it still goes up or down a little bit week to week, but generally up. But they're saying the numbers are down because the crossings between the ports of entry are down.
Yeah.
Because they're funneling the illegals that were crossing between the ports of entry. They're funneling through the ports of entry with the CBP-1 app.
Yeah, come get your easy pass. Come right through.
Yeah,
all right.
you've
been very busy. You've had a bunch of town halls. I know that everybody's worried about, these. I just saw something yesterday that I thought was just so despicable. A sheriff in Fulton County, Georgia. There will be a mugshot. There will be a mugshot. That prosecutor down there is a disgrace, and the sheriff is there. And all the people behind him have this little smirk. They're all little Stacey Abrams clones. And it's really despicable to see them doing this to a former president. Is there any way to defund Jack Smith or any of this stuff through the budget process? Can you do that? I mean, I think it would be difficult probably because it's through the Department of Justice. But is there any way to target that kind of thing? The
answer
Smith
is sort of. I mean, we have that language in there, but listen, if every member of the Republican conference, if all 222 of us were like the 38 of us that are in the Freedom Caucus, we wouldn't have any problem.
Yep.
But you've got 40 or 50, 60 Republicans that are part of our conference that are so what we call squishy. They don't want to be too aggressive. They're worried about their district. They're worried about the independent vote in their district. And personally, I don't even buy that whole snake oil sales pitch that we've been hearing ad nauseum for all this time about how purple districts are the swing districts, and you have to support those Republicans. How do you explain a guy like Scott Perry, who wins in
Pennsylvania,
a Democrat district, and he wins every 2 years? He's the chairman of the Freedom Caucus, and he's unwavering on his principles. How do you explain stories like that?
Yeah.
So
I agree with you. They should have more courage.
We're going to try to defund these guys, but let me just say, may they all choke on their arrogance, because America is watching these people enjoy it. It's a discredit to the badge they bring. Those men standing in a press conference saying that with that smirk, they're like Mayorkas.
Yeah.
They have a reptilian evil about themselves, and we completely oppose it. We reject that kind of elitist arrogance that we're witnessing out of these leftists that have this maniacal glee about themselves with going after our president unrighteously and it really attacking his family. It's sickening
It is
what
sickening.
they're doing and who they are. And they will have their comeuppance. They will face their maker one day.
Yeah. Well,
and they're going to be held ultimately accountable, as are we all.
I don't want them to wait. I don't want to wait that long.
Unrighteousness that we
Congressman,
participate in life. And those folks are guilty. Themselves are guilty.
okay, let's go Old Testament on them. I don't want to wait that long. I want to see them smitten. I want to see them. Anyway, but you, before I know you're so busy, and we have that function tonight, and I'll be seeing you there. You did something very brave when you said that the Louisiana Freedom Caucus urges the Louisiana Library Association, to break ties with the American Library Association. As usual, when you weigh in on the cultural issues, the left goes bananas. But I really appreciate you doing that, because, and what people don't understand is the woman who is now the head of the American Library Association has outed herself. She's a Marxist. She gleefully.
She's a Marxist.
She said, I'm a Marxist.
Yeah. I don't know where these leftists come from. It's like they breed these people in laboratory experiments or something. I don't know how you can be a successful American and live in our society and stand up there and proudly proclaim yourself as a Marxist, like coming out of the closet or something.
Exactly.
And you're running the Library Association for the whole country, and yet you got leftists calling me some kind of a Nazi book burner because I don't want child pornography, available to my children in the public library.
I know. Listen, I know. I know you have to get going. You made time for me, and I really appreciate it so much. I appreciate you so much, Congressman. We'll see you this evening at the function this evening. God bless. Take care, and my best to beautiful Becca. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carroll. See you this evening.
You bet.